Hello, I'm Rick, the Batman GM. I am your GM, your game master for the day. I have 40 years of experience. I began playing when I was 12 years old, and my experience runs from old Dungeons and Dragons through Star Wars and Battletech, Shadowrun, and a slew of others. It's always been my philosophy that role-playing games and tabletop board games, gaming as a social medium is a great way for all walks of life to come together and enjoy camaraderie and exploring and stepping out of our comfort zone, if you will. So, this is your place at the table.
Well, I did an unboxing not that long ago, showing because I just rediscovered a box of my miniatures, and I was grateful finding them because I thought I had lost them in the move. Like I said, a large portion of my BattleTech collection is now at the bottom of a gopher's hole under my mother's barn. So I imagine the new owners or in the future somebody's children will be digging around out there in the dirt and unload of real treasure, and I hope they enjoy them. The fact of the matter is, I know that these are great props for tables. They add an element of color and 3-dimension, as well as serve as a focus for the players to concentrate on their characters and how their characters are moving. It's much more convenient if we have a grid or a map and we can position our characters. If we're using a grid system, it's pretty easy to count the squares from here to here to just, for distance purposes and things like this, areas of effect, things like that. And the added flavor of these things are not to be underestimated. But I also know from personal experience, these things are not cheap. They were not cheap back in the day when I bought most of these, or all of these for that matter, and I imagine they are still not cheap. They probably, anything, have gotten to be more expensive. So over the years, I have utilized a number of props in lieu of these things, and in other locations where it wasn't conducive for me to bring these things, because these are lead, they're heavy. If you bring a significant number of them, that adds a lot of weight to a game bag or a box, and then there's the worry of them getting damaged, no matter how you package them and transport them. There's also places and times where they're just not a good thing to have around, and so I found alternate methods. And I know some players and some members of our various groups who have talked about this subject in the past, where they've gone, in some cases, found some really cheap, very effective plastic miniatures in local game toy stores, like the old plastic army men, for example, work just fine. And in some cases are actually suited for the particular genre that they may be playing in. And then there's Legos. I have an associate who used Legos as props instead of miniatures, and they're probably more expensive than the miniatures are in some aspects, considering how much the bigger sets cost. But he gets them on the cheap whenever he can find them, and there's a lot of variety within them, so you can do quite a bit as a table prop. Then there are tokens and just plain. I've used old dice, for example, in a pinch. One of my go-tos, I know if you look at these, you'll recognize this as an older set from and I know it. Darn it, I know the game, damn it. I know the game is just killing me. Lord, and it'll come back to me when I don't need it. And the newer version of the game has actual soldiers and little cannons and horses, so they work just as good. I also use these things as counters, so especially if I'm doing tabletop wargaming or battle and I need to keep track of a number of something that's been done or fired or what have you, the colors allow you to coordinate, or your players can pick a color and or a significant, so here's Fred and here's Gene, so here's my character, there's your character, etc. So on. And the name of this game is right on the tip of my tongue. That's a sign of getting old. Too many years of certain subject materials that I probably shouldn't discuss on in videos. But I also have a original box set for Axis and Allies, and they got some nice little miniatures in that set too. But I don't like to get them out of the box. I don't want to lose them. Geez, and this is going to bother me because I know what it is, right? All right, well, we'll just move on. We'll let it go. My usual go-to, though, is creating my own tokens. And this is for use in my Stellar Frontiers game system for tabletop war. It's a variation of any mecha-based combat system, with the exception I have a la Starship Troopers. I have bugs as a nasty foe, but I have and mecha in mind, or mechs, to avoid plagiarism issues, are called War Knights. They're called War Knights. We have plenty of War Knights, and then various calibers and starfighters, which irony, you can't use a mech. Generally speaking, a battle mech is considered plagiarizing, but a starfighter isn't, right? So nobody owns Starfighter, but they own Battle Mech. So because it's quote, for BattleTech, and there was a big lawsuit back in the day between them and Robotech's owners, and still ongoing, what have you. Tanks and hovercraft and infantry positions. For those of you who do not play tabletop war games or video versions of them, you probably wouldn't recognize the symbology, but in this case, this is a infantry unit. It's on foot, and the R in this case stands for reconnaissance infantry, but that's just because it's my thing. And or excuse me, I stand corrected. The R represents the unit number, so that would be squad R or company R or unit R. So this would be a hovercraft. Kind of looks like an inverted comb, but that's the representation for a hovercraft, which is a tank, a hover tank in this case. It's unit P, so this could be a squad or what have you. Here's one for a helicopter. That's a helo. This is a wheeled vehicle, usually a tank. The reason I know they're tanks is because they don't have the infantry they're not marked as infantry. And let's see if I can find a motorized version of an infantry unit. Yeah, right here. Okay, so let me review. I think it's the wrong one, of course. There we go. I'll get you out of there yet. You're just messing with me because you know I'm doing a video. Okay, so in this case, this, where can you see it? Probably not. There's the infantry symbol, and above it is the symbol for tracks. So this is a tracked infantry vehicle, an APC of some sort, and it is unit E for posterity purposes, what have you, right? And I'm not sure what I was using these for. These are markers to be written on, so if I need to make some adjustments or what have you, right? And so I've got a number of these cases with things like this. I also have some of the old BattleTech symbols. Have you ever seen BattleTech, the original tabletop? They have these little card sets that sit up and have all the stats written on them, and then there's a little indent or an extrusion at the top that shows what type of mech or vehicle it is. That comes with a limited number of those, but I caught on real fast how to use stickers, labels, to create my own and cut them out, and then cut out pieces of cardboard stock and put the label over top of them. So you learn to make do and improvise with what you have. I mean, there are a countless number of methods and means to create tokens for visual effect on your table, and some games perspective are more important than others. So if you're doing vehicle combat, it's almost imperative, unless it's a running gun chase in storyline. If you're actually doing multiple vehicles, it's best to have some kind of token to represent them, even if it's just you putting a couple rocks on the table or a couple orange juice glasses or what have you, and representing where they're located. Just makes for simplicity sake, and I'm sure many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. So this is my take on alternate game tokens and miniatures.